So for Act 3, Scene 1, we're starting on page 93, and as you can see here, there's not a lot that we're going to spend, we're not going to spend a lot of time on this page. Our first main section is down here on line 23. So on this page, Cassio is seeking out Desdemona via Emilia to ask her to help him win back Othello's trust and favour. It's very clear here, that's your quotation to show that that's happening. But if you look, it's actually Cassio speaking to a clown. Now, a clown is a very familiar character in many Shakespeare plays. The clown's job was to relieve tension, and often the person playing the clown would come up with their own lines and have a lot of wordplay and puns and be very entertaining. So you could consider at this point why it's necessary for the clown to be here at this moment in the play. So Iago is about to embark on his plan. He shared that with the audience at the end of Act 2 in a lot of detail. We know exactly what's going to happen. So before we see that happen, Shakespeare includes this section with the clown for a little bit of light comic relief. Some people also argue about the idea that the clown, because he uses plenty of puns, for example, you can see just at the top here, tail and tail, there's that idea that, it symbolises the misunderstandings that are about to happen in this act, and actually it certainly does highlight how easily language can create misunderstandings, even in something as small as the word tail. So Iago has a very powerful tool at his disposal by using just language to manipulate Othello. Some people also argue that there's symbolism in the idea that this message is being delivered by a clown, perhaps highlighting the foolishness of the plan that Cassio's doing here. And obviously it's Iago's plan, isn't it, for him to reach out to Desdemona for help. So this page, that's all I'm going to say about it, because this is often cut out of modern productions. I think nowadays we tend to keep our tragedies strictly tragic, and we don't have that need for that comic relief. We might say that that's quite jarring and ruins the tone if there's suddenly a comical scene in the middle of a tragedy in one of our films, for example. So that's all I'm going to say on this page. So if you turn over, please, to page 95, a little bit more here. Okay. So on this page, we learn at the top that Cassio has not been to bed. On line 35, Iago says here, I'll devise a mean to draw the more out of the way, that your converse and business may be more free. Okay, so we can cross-reference this to in Act 2, Scene 3, and the page number's there for you, where Iago says that he'll draw Othello out of the way. But of course, the second part of this, the secret part that Iago isn't sharing here, is that he's going to make sure, therefore, that Othello walks in on Desdemona and Cassio in a way that creates suspicion, and we'll see that in Act 3, Scene 3. So we know that Iago's already intending to put his, he's already well on his way to putting his plan into action. And then we have this great line here from Cassio. I never knew a Florentine more honest and kind and honest. It just has the audience groaning in frustration, doesn't it? As Cassio declares Iago the most honest Florentine he's ever met. It just continues to exploit his dramatic irony to us, and we just feel more and more frustrated. And just, you just imagine everyone shaking their head thinking, oh, he's the opposite. And it's a great feeling in the audience that, that sense of I know more than you. And it gives the audience a lot of ownership over the play and what they're watching. Okay, so Emilia then enters and speaks to Cassio and says, I'm sorry for what's happened to you, but be sure all will be well. And she says then that Othello and Desdemona are already talking about what's happened with Cassio, because obviously it was just the night before. And the first line that I think is really important here is this one: she speaks for you stoutly. So this is really interesting for two reasons. Firstly, Desdemona is helping Cassio without him even directly asking her to. So that shows, her loveliness, that she would do that anyway, and that she obviously does care for Cassio. But secondly, that word stoutly is really quite masculine. It carries some very masculine connotations, connotes bravery, and that she's speaking without reserve. which obviously she's speaking to her husband, and that should be the case. But remember, and don't ever forget, she is interfering here with his work and a work decision, and that is certainly crossing the boundaries of what her role as a wife is. However, in Desdemona's defense, Cassio is a friend. Cassio is the person who has been a go-between between Othello and Desdemona as the relationship blossomed and they planned their marriage and their wedding. So, you know, she certainly would feel like she has a right to speak on Cassio's behalf. So we also learn from Emilia in this speech, and this is really important for how we interpret Cassio. So if you have a look here, we find out, remember Cassio hurt Montano, okay? Now Montano, we find out here, is of great fame in Cyprus. He is a really important man. So because he's so important, Othello's hands are tied. Emilia says he might not but refuse you. So he might not but refuse you, but he protests he loves you. This means he has no choice but to refuse him because he injured someone who is so important. His hands are tied because what can he do? He's had one of his men injure someone really important in Cyprus. He has to show that he's punished him. Excuse me, I'm so sorry. I've got a sore throat. And I think all this talking is not helping, but I'm going to carry on anyway. But again, we've got this idea that Othello loves Cassio. Othello being an affiliate leader who brings his emotions into the way he leads with people. So it also says underneath that Othello will take the safest occasion by the front to bring you in again, and that's here, which essentially means that Othello is promising via Emilia to bring Cassio back into his company at the earliest opportunity. The safest occasion is the earliest opportunity. So he's basically saying there, don't worry, this is not forever. And actually, I think we really need to ask ourselves here, should this not have been enough for Cassio? Othello has made it very clear that he's not taking this personally, that he's doing this because he has to, and that as soon as he can, he's going to let him back into the fold. So should Cassio have been more patient? And actually, does Cassio lack compassion and trust in Othello by not responding to this and leaving him be? Or even the fact he's not even leaving him be, he's leaving his wife be. He's pestering his wife, and we'll see across this act, he asks her twice for help, not only just once. You know, there's that sense that Cassio maybe should have let this go. We will see later on why he doesn't want to. But I think it's important that we ask ourselves that question about Cassio at this point in the play. So regardless, behaving as Iago's puppet, he does still pursue Desdemona, as we see on line 50 here. He would like some brief discourse with Desdemona alone, so he's still requesting and going ahead with the plan. Okay, and that ends Act 3, Scene 1. So I'm just going to do Act 3, Scene 2 now because this is the whole scene. I think it's the shortest scene in the play. Essentially, this scene establishes that Othello is getting on with his duties. If you see line 3, he says that once he's done his duties to the Senate, he'll be walking on the works, which are the ramparts of the castle, and come back to me there. It also indicates that Iago is well placed to pour pestilence, quote, into Othello's ear because Othello's obviously relying on him. They're obviously in close contact with each other. And even though he seems here like he's his second-hand man and maybe replacing Cassio, actually he's still only doing administrative duties for him. So it's worth taking that into account as well. Okay, so that's it for Act 3, Scene